Hello, and welcome to the very 7th episode of the Ascension Speed Show. I'm Lift, and I'm also joined by Animus. Animus, welcome.
Hello, I've decided to turn up this week.
I was going to say something like, and I'm joined as always, well, except for that one time, but daylight savings time is no longer a puzzle that needs solved.
Yeah, it's good to be back.
I'm going to hand the hosting hat over to you. We have some special guests.
We do indeed. We are joined by the lovely Violet.
Hello.
And the lovely Slaw.
Hello.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody. I hope everyone had a relaxing, food-filled festival, whatever you guys do, I don't know.
30 minutes of eating.
Yeah. No news this week. Basically, Jai had won the log competition, and we'll be doing that at some point. Just need to find a schedule that suits him. So I guess we shift right over into things. And first on the agenda now this week is the November item of the month, which is I've still got it on the spreadsheet as the voting ballot thing. I think it's the voting registration form. I think
that is the name.
Something like that.
The proper title. Have you guys had a chance to kind of use this much?
I haven't done a run with it. I've looked at it briefly.
I've unlocked the trophy, but that's like it.
I haven't used it at all.
Not at all. Well,
I haven't even looked at it.
Wow.
What we do know about it is that at least in run, it's the intrinsics. So basically, you have like different buffs that you have permanently for that day when you vote. For example, like plus 10 cold damage, plus 20% gear drops, something like that. Like
yeah, but they're all useless because there's a -1, so you have to pick that every time.
Yeah.
So
to get the trophy even after the trophy's been gotten.
Not even for the trophy, you just have to. It's there, so you have to click it.
Okay.
That's my impression of it from every comment I've seen about it.
Is this what people on Reddit seem to think?
The Reddit thread is hilarious. I would strongly recommend anyone here reading it, just because everyone hates it for like a different reason, and all of the reasons are nonsense. It's great. It's just great.
Oh, I like it. So, and we're going to talk about why we like it. So, anyway, these buffs, these intrinsics, they're in run. They seem to be seeded by. It's something similar to how. What's the other thing like that?
Just like the Confiscator's Grimoire.
Right.
Because everyone knows that one.
If people remember that.
And you got your daily affirmations.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So it's something like class, path, and day. And then the Wanderers have an interesting mechanic because they appear dependent on your lifetime turns. So once your lifetime turns is a multiple of 11, the next turn, so that, I mean, in proper language, I guess that's 11 mod 1. So the next turn will be a Wanderer. And the Wanderers also change depending on who won the vote. Which I think you expressed a little bit of concern about this when the item of the month first came out, right, Slaw? About people getting angry because there's one Wanderer people want, and then...
Yeah, I mean, I'm just predicting that, 4 months from now, someone's gonna complain on behalf of people who aren't them about factoids being missing, or factoids being hard to get for people who don't have factoids, and people who want to ascend fast, really wanting a specific monster that's like at odds with what farmers want. But I don't know, I haven't really seen much complaint about it from Ascendi people.
I find it's slightly annoying because, like, if we remember back to those stat days that we used to have, where you used to be able, you used to plan your run around a certain stat day, and this was annoying for more than one reason. One being people only had time on weekends, for example, so they wanted to do runs on weekends, and stat weekends were like few and far between. And then this is kind of that not really 2.0, more like 1.2, something like that, where we want angry ghosts because they give stuff that we want. We're not guaranteed that angry ghosts will be the platform that people pick in the first place, like you said, because farmers... I don't know, what is the one that farmers want to
I have no idea. It's going to be whatever is worth the most, and that seems like it's going to be the ghosts or the 1 day pass from the government.
So, yeah, there's no way to guarantee it, and it's a little bit random, so I guess that could induce a bit of fury in the community, but so far, we're placated apart from those few Reddit that, you know, that there is paid content and there's a bad option and I have to click it and I'm very upset about that sort of
it's mentality. Like people don't get that there's 3 positive options always, and so you're picking one of those 3, and they're acting like they could have a 4th one, but that's taken up by the negative, and thus they don't get 4 effects every day, even though they only get 2 effects every day anyway. And it's like never, like if it just wasn't there at all, they would just have 3 and they'd be like, oh, I get to pick 2 out of 3.
Yeah, that's the best argument I can come up with. Speaking of negative intrinsics, though, I think the minus monster level one must be considered a positive intrinsic in that case, because literally today I got -3 stats and -10 monster level, so I assume it must be a positive intrinsic.
Oh, that's so weird. You know what? You're probably right, because the way that actually works on the back end, God, what is it? It's like monster difficulty bonus or something, and plus monster level is actually negative in that bonus. So that would make sense. That's weird. I should ask CDM to fix that.
Well, spaded here first, guys. Do you want to walk us through how we can use Mafia to kind of track these wanderers? Because it's not the most simple task to do by hand.
There's the main 2 preferences in Mafia, and you can use the GCLI to set these. So one of them is just to set Mafia to warn you when you are about to encounter one of your free fights. Essentially just set the ending term to be free. And then there's another one where you can just set it to equal true, which would be every single time, even if the fight is not free.
Liv, why would we care about anything more than the free wanderers?
It will help next year because Source Terminal rotates. As such, port scan is no longer available. As we've talked about in the past, we like to use port scan or our new item of the month to have it so a wanderer shows up in the Son of a Beach so that we can macrometeorite away from that monster and encounter a lobster frogman, thus not wasting turns searching for the combat by boosting our combat rate. So it's going to be really helpful, and it also means that potentially if you reserved enough macrometeorites, you could encounter all 5 lobster frogman on the same day instead of having to split and wait for your 3 port scans on one day and use your other 2 the next.
Where would we want to put these wanderers? Obviously, all wanderers, do the same job, but since we can put these wanderers pretty much anywhere we want, because, well, within a space of 33 turns at the very minimum, where should we think about putting these?
Anywhere that you want to have your delay burned as quickly as possible. So right off the bat, on day 1 of an Ascension, I'm thinking Spooky Forest, because you have 5 turns of delay, and currently you can wait and get all your writing desks placed in the forest, but you might want access to the tavern before your monster level buffs wear off, or you're looking to hit a certain semi-rare window. So you can just use this to burn delay at minimum 3 turns per day. Anywhere you would normally place wandering monsters, place your 3 free wanderers there.
So just to wrap up, so the ghost is the best in run, and why is that? Because they drop haunted. Is it haunted ectoplasm or spooky ectoplasm? I forget.
Haunted, yeah. All the items that are related to them start with haunted, I think.
On its own, it's not that impressive. It's like 3 turns of a decent buff, but it's like 3 turns for 1 fullness, and it's crappy quality, literally crappy quality.
Oh wow, it's actually not haunted. It's ghostly ectoplasm.
Yeah, I was thinking.
What the heck?
Yeah. Ghostly ectoplasm, sorry. Where do we want this item buff? Well, essentially it's the same. It's also a meat buff, I should add.
50% meat, 25% item.
The stomach is 50% item, I think. And then the haunted liver is 25% item and 50% meat. I think that's how it works. Or is it the other way around?
Wait, really?
Haunted stomach is different to haunted liver. I'm just going to check that now. Haunted liver.
Okay, I'm looking it up. Oh, wow. They're totally switch. I didn't know that.
I learned something as well. All right.
Man.
Yeah. So, to clarify, haunted liver is plus 50% item, plus 25%
Holy
meat,
crap.
and haunted stomach is plus 25% item, plus 50% meat. So, I mean, clearly these would be great to use in the nuns, for the nuns, and also for getting our green smoke bombs among perhaps other places that you need item drop if you're not already capping. At least in Bleeding Edge, we're not really... The only places we're not capping items is basically those green smoke bombs.
The second smoke bomb drop?
No, they're actually the same drop rate. I saw that you guys still seem to think that they're like 6 and 3, but they're both 4.
Yeah, they're both 4.
Oh, that was probably me. Sorry.
It's all good.
Mafia does... the Wiki does say it's 6 and 3, so that's... I'll make a note to change that, actually. Grop drops. Okay.
Yeah, it got changed when Live, Ascend, Repeat came out. I
remember you spading.
I think I spade. Yeah. And then Lost added it to the Mafia data files like immediately.
Why is this annoying? Is because the ghostly ectoplasm needs to be cooked and or mixed with other stuff to get a better yield on the turns per fullness of the effect, and the hippie store obviously is closed to most of us until after we've done the nuns, because it opens after we've spent a bunch of turns in the battlefield. So that means that we can't, unless we get the hippie outfit beforehand, we can't eat or drink the food from the hippie store to get the buffs to do the nuns, because we've already done the nuns by that point. So I think for most players, if you're few skill and not even few skill, I mean, I think for a lot of people this is a really good option just to get a bunch of angry ghosts, even non-free angry ghosts, farm up a bunch of ghostly ectoplasms and basically open the hippie store early and just eat and drink as much haunted stuff as you can, because it's pretty good. It's like awesome quality. I mean, why not, right?
I don't know. I don't actually know what the quality is. God, I feel like I should know more about this.
If your turn count is low enough and turn generation is not really important, then you could just eat the ghostly ectoplasm and call it a day.
That I agree with.
I believe, like, for example, like the Haunted Hell Ramen is basically Hell Ramen, but better. In terms of turns, it's slightly better than Hell Ramen as far as I know. I'll just check that, but... So it is actually slightly better than the original turn generation of the Hell Ramen, I believe.
Yeah, I heard people saying that, but yeah, that would make sense.
Whether it's true or not. It's hard to kind of get those buffs to work where you want them to work, at least for the nuns. I guess this will be something that becomes more apparent next year and how we're actually utilising these buffs, because right now we're not really hurting that much for item drop, and then meat drop is obviously only really useful in the nuns. So we'll probably come back to this next year and discuss that. Violet.
Yes?
Just checking you're with us. Question number 1. Where does your name come from? Because it does have insane in there, so...
What are you trying to say?
Where does this name come from?
I'm not playing from a mental institution. My name came from purple is my favorite color. So I was saying that I was crazy about purple. That's where Violetinsane came from. One of the most frequently asked personal questions that I'm often asked is my name Violet, which it's not true. That's just what it came from, was me really liking the color purple.
3 years ago, you started getting more into the social side of KOL and also into PvP. What drew you into that side of KOL?
I've actually been playing KOL for 12 years. Yeah, it was about 3 years ago that I started going into chat. And when I started doing that, I kind of met some people who were really into PvP, and they just kind of shared their love of PvP with me, and I started doing it. The first season that I started PvPing, I actually won the fame board. And so it was just kind of an addiction from there on out.
Congrats, that's an accomplishment. So a new season arrives, and it's your very first day. What goes through your mind? How do you prepare for the next set of minis?
It really kind of depends because every season is different. Usually the first thing that I do is when a new season rolls out, is I just take a lot of time to just take it all in. I usually spend most of the entire first day thinking about the minis, looking at the minis, thinking about, have I ever played a season that had this mini before or a mini similar to it? How did I approach it? How do I want to approach it this time? And it just kind of depends on if I think that I want to try to go for a board or if I'm doing a contest or how it's relevant to me. I just take a lot of time to think about the minis before I do anything at all.
You said something about goals, what my goal was, depending on, was I shooting for the leaderboard? Like, do you want to fill your organs with things that give you adventures so that you can increase your mini scores? Do you want to eat things that boost your mini scores, or do you just want to get more PvP fight generation? What is your management between all of those?
Again, it depends on what I'm going for. I would say if you are farming swagger for like Ascension relevant skills or, the PvP reward of the season, you mostly just want to fight gen. If you wanted to try and place on the winning board, you probably want a lot of fight gen. If you want to do well with fame, you would want to work your minis really hard. As far as the Ascension relevant swagger, you don't really have to focus on working your minis as hard as just generating a lot of fights.
Oh yeah, not at all. I'm speaking as a swagger farmer.
Does that mean it's important to get like a single point in these minis and then leave them alone, just so you can beat people who have absolutely, well, I guess 0 in that mini?
Yeah, I would definitely say that is the case. I would definitely recommend not eating the crappy food or booze that they want you to consume for the minis if all you're trying to do is farm swagger. Like I was telling Lift this before, if you have something like a score of 1 in any mini, you are probably going to do better than probably half the people that are PvPing. If you spend an entire day working a mini, you're probably going to do better than like 75% of the people that are PvPing because most people aren't working minis.
That's actually really interesting to know, even for me.
In general, do you ascend in a certain old challenge path?
Kind of depends. Some seasons I don't even ascend at all. I usually PvP in normal rather than hardcore, and as far as farming swagger, I would definitely recommend that anyone who wants to farm swagger does it in normal. And if you're running hardcore, you probably want to do it in aftercore just because of the resources that are available to you in normal are a lot more than what's available in hardcore.
Oh, also, people are a lot worse in hardcore than normal.
That's true.
Because there's fewer hardcore people, thus there's more bad people in normal for you to get swagger from.
Absolutely, a very good point. Yeah, I would recommend that. As far as the path goes, I think the most often ascended path that I do when I PvP is just the big path.
Because it gives you a boost in level?
Just because you start out at level 15 and you can, I mean, it depends on what the minis are, like I said, but you can, get to more bosses if bosses are a mini. Or I just feel like there's more of the game that's opened up to you at that point.
And like sea equipment and stuff.
Oh, that's a good point.
So just to quickly brush over what we'd actually want from PvP, we've got the thick skin skill, which comes from the skill book in the swagger store, which is called How to Tolerate Jerks, which is 2000 swagger. In numerology seasons, we get the numerology... No, what's it called?
Manual of Numerology? Numberology?
Whatever it's called.
Numberology.
The manual. Yeah. The manual of numerology. And then obviously the most optimal of all is actually the current season's Safari guide, which gives you the best chat effect in the game.
Wow, not even talking about summon annoyance.
Going right to the good stuff.
Don't like those jaw bruisers?
The Safari guide is by far the most important thing in the game.
Fair enough.
Summon annoyance is good. There's a very small chance. Is it 1% or is it lower to get...
Something like that, yeah.
For the jaw bruiser, which currently we can use with the sweet synthesis skill.
Oh.
It's a complex candy.
Yep.
More summon annoyance is optimal right now. I've yet to get one in run, but hey, maybe in December.
Oh, I've had it happen.
Nice.
And it's why Devster Steven has 15 levels of summon annoyance just to make that happen.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive. I caught that stream.
Does it cost swagger to cast or something like that?
I think the swagger cost is floored at 1. I've never checked it myself, but I believe it's what Pantsless said when he got to that point. He was upset that it didn't cost 0, I think. So Cheese Cookie is saying the same thing. So
the important thing to remember is that if you have a jewel-eyed wizard hat and you put that on and you cast your Safari Call, you get five more turns per cast.
Oh, just if it's in your inventory, actually. You don't have to wear the Jewel-Eyed Wizard hat.
You don't have to wear it?
No, that was changed years ago.
That's why I get 15 turns. I thought it increased because of because I had level 2 of it or something.
Oh, no, 2 is just 2 casts.
So it's just 10 turns base and that doesn't go up?
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay, so it was because of my Jew hat.
Yes.
Excellent. And also remember that you can use your platinum whatever thingy cards. So make sure that you're pulling those from your clan stash and then obviously putting them back afterwards, but using those for that, your primitive alien boos, and obviously you do all this in run as well.
And you have to make sure that you don't use chat commands while you have the effect active, because those will burn it down.
Oh. Could that be changed?
It should. I notice at the start of every day I have 15 or 30 turns of the effect just from random people using it on me. But by the time my farming script is done, those are all gone because it uses chat macros. Because I'm awful at scripting.
Does it burn on PMs as well?
I don't know about that. Probably.
Oh. Well, I think this obviously this is, pertinent that you need to bring this up with CDM, along with whatever the other thing was that probably wasn't as important.
Ah, yes, so important.
Oh, yeah, the monster level thing. Never mind that.
Well, pretty soon we're almost going to spend more time talking about the Safari Guide than the item of the month, so that's a good start.
Well, none of us know anything about the item of the month.
Yeah.
3 free fights a day and stuff.
Yeah, it gives other stuff. Right, okay, well, before we start talking about the Safari Guide for the rest of the episode, Violet, anything more you want to add about PvP? Favourite PvP season and or reward?
My favorite PvP season is Bear season. I just really like those minis the best. Yeah, farming the Black Forest is really fun.
I guess it's optimal.
Yes, super optimal.
For meat. I'm not sure if I have that skill. I think I have 1. I think has it come 3 times now? Or 2 times at least?
I think 3?
Yeah, I think 3.
It would have mattered a lot more back when we needed black pepper for the giant fried egg or whatever it was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Reminiscing about old tower days, anyway.
Reliving your Scrub Lord days of not tower killing.
Let's move on to the battlefield spading, because I'm done talking about Safari. Animus, you put out a call for donations, and how did that go for this spading attempt?
We pledged for people to help us buy, donate, whatever, 42,000 runaways for a battlefield spading effort, which King Bobson magnificently carried out, and very many thanks to him. So, I don't know, it took I can't remember how, it was 8 hours or less than that to get all 42,000 tatters, which was pretty insane. Also a few go-tos.
Yeah, 6,000 of them.
I think in the end it was 8,000, 7,000 of which you sold me. Go-tos, if anyone doesn't know, are 33% chance to run away.
They're the thing you get while you're farming optimal spreadsheets with your Mayfly free runaways, which, by the way, works based on the optimal spreadsheet I got yesterday.
Oh, so why do we need 42,000 different tatters? Well, the battlefield has 21, let's call them brackets. Now, what I mean by a bracket is a different point in the war where a monster that is available during the war is either added, subtracted, or both. So a monster is added and another monster is subtracted. And there's 21 different windows during the battlefield that this happens. Now, it was spaded before that this happens as in, well, kind of embarrassingly so, because we didn't realise it was already on the Mafia forums, I think. Or was it KOL Spading?
KOL Spading. It was the official spading forum, the most obvious place.
Yeah. But to be fair, I forgot that place existed. Anyway, it was like back in 2012, so maybe, I don't know, Jake put a cog in the works and, changed it all up. Who knows. But what we didn't know is actually the distribution of monsters, so how many copies of a monster there are. If people don't know, there are certain zones in KOL which are affected by where the monsters are not like a uniform one copy per monster distribution. One example being
series of irritating random encounters?
Yes. In the airship, which as far as I know is a double copy. Does that sound right?
That's my understanding, yeah. Sure.
Same again for the astronomer, but one, or is it both the astronomers have rejection?
Oh god. I think that's 2 copies and it has like a 25% rejection.
There's probably other places where there's multiple copies that we just don't know.
Icy Peak. You have more copies of the everything but the Snow Queen, I think.
Slaw, I'll let you take over and explain what you've been doing.
As far as the data they gathered, I just linked it in the podcast chat. You'll see to the right of that spreadsheet that I linked, it's what I've actually been doing on this. With all of the data that we had, the question is how many copies of each monster is there? Are there? Whatever. And do those numbers change? Like, is the number of copies at each battlefield state, each of the 21 or 22 states, is the number of copies of a given monster the same at each state that it's in? So just things like that. Is there a rejection rate, etc.? All the stuff that you have to go through. So I wrote some simulation. I think that's actually linked in Battlefield Notes, another sheet over, to check some hypotheses for the end behavior of a given distribution of a number of copies. So if you have 2 of this monster, 1 of this monster, 3 of this monster, etc. And I used that simulator to generate what the expected frequency is going to be in the end behavior, because the naive average of just adding up all the copies and having it as a fraction of 2 divided by that number for the frequency, that doesn't work unless you have the same number of everything. You do have to do some either hard math, a simulation. So the math is actually fun. What I've proven since doing this is that the map from copy distributions to steady states, the steady state distribution, is actually a contraction about the uniform distribution, if that means anything to anyone here, an L2 norm or something, but whatever. So, yeah, there will be a paper coming out of this endeavor. But anyway, so after I generated a distribution with the simulation, I would check that against the observed distribution, and the thing that was used to check is just the typical Pearson's chi-squared test. So I just use Google Sheets chi-squared test function for each of those, and I ended up finding one distribution doesn't change the number of copies between states and has either 1 or 2 copies of every monster that shows up, and that one had some chi-squared test statistics, or chi-squared probabilities of at least 0.5, not 0.05, but 0.5 is the lowest, I think 5.9 or something, and everything else was 0.9 or better. thereabouts. Or, okay, 0.51 was lowest. But anyway, so when you have stuff like that, it's a very good fit for the data. Like, I would have thought that it fit even if there were some lower numbers, like in the 20-ish range, or 0.2 range. But, so it fits really well. And that distribution ends up being summarized in the sheet to the right of that data. So, given all that, God, I'm talking a long time. Everything has 1 or 2 copies, and the most important thing is that when you banish a monster, you're banishing both copies of it. The ideal banishing targets are the ones that have 2 copies and have the largest overlap with the Green Ops soldiers. So yeah, that's the goal here, was to figure out like which ones should be banished, and I have those more or less highlighted on that sheet, because it's mostly just that you want to batter up the rigor, and then any of the other ones with a large overlap are fine to banish. So yeah, that's the gist of the spading that we've done.
Slaw, sorry, do you have a hairbrush?
A hairbrush?
Yeah, for the ASMR.
Oh my god.
Seriously? Not ready.
That's what they do, right? They get like a hairbrush and kind of like rub their nails on it or something.
You gotta tap on stuff. Like whisper.
Totally inappropriate. I'm sorry. Before we do get into that, so Slaw, could you give us explain it like I'm an intellectual 5-year-old?
Oh god. What part?
What does this mean, like, in terms of, do copies move around, and how many copies are there?
1 to 2 of everything, 1 of Green Ops soldiers specifically. The copies of a given monster is constant throughout.
Okay, excellent.
I think that's about it.
Based on your simulations, this is...
It's the only one where there's like a low number of copies of everything and a constant number of copies of everything that fits really well. None of the other distributions come very close to fitting. Like there was one where it was like if you increase the number of copies by 1 every state, and so you end up with like 15 copies of one monster and 14 of another. That's also a good fit or something, but that's just like overfitting nonsense. So anyway.
So basically, like, why is this relevant and what can we do with it? Well, when I first had this hunch about how this might work, because I think we've got the most banishes we've ever had.
I believe we have 6.
Mm-hmm.
Even in unrestricted. I mean, compared to unrestricted before standard was a thing, I think we've got the most current banishes that we've ever had. So did you say 6? So we got
Hot Jelly, Asden, Batter Up, Latte, KGB, and Snoke Bomb.
And you've all forgotten the new U banish, which you shouldn't use.
Right.
Yes, I did forget about that one.
And also, if you wanted to wish for...
That's the 7th, actually.
Wish for Nano Brony, you also have a banish there.
You have to wish for it twice.
Oh, do you actually have to?
You have to have at least 40 turns.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, never mind. Forget I said that. Please don't do that. So we have 6 banishes. So that means we have a window where we can run, for example, 2000 item drop and banish everything that we see that isn't a Green Ops soldier during that window. If you're being super optimal, I guess you'd use Batter Up before having your buffs turned on. And also you'd want to prioritize banishing stuff which is going to be around until the end of the war. I think the best examples of banish was something like the Rigger.
Yeah, the Rigger, the Elite Rigger, Green Gourmet, Elder Shaman, Wind Talker, Airborne Commander, and Sweat Lodge are the best 7. Everything else is worse than that.
Mm-hmm. Green Gourmet is probably the worst out of those because I think it comes in like 450 and then goes away 750, something like that. But the other ones stay around to like 900.
It's the one with 2 copies And so...
Is that better to just get it out of the way?
Think of it this way. In practice, what you're probably going to do is still be digitizing a Green Ops soldier. So what you'll be doing is wishing for it, digitizing it, olfacting it, etc., doing all of that to one of them. And that'll be right before you start doing all this nonsense on the battlefield. You're then going to have like 10 turns of the plus 2,000% item or whatever. Your goal is to get as many green smoke bombs as possible out of that in that 10-turn window. So in that window, the Green Gourmet is the only one with 2 copies besides the Elite Rigger, I believe. Am I remembering that correctly? Yeah. So the Green Gourmet is actually fine to banish, because what you're probably going to end up doing is doing the 2,000% item drop thing, and then having like 5 kills left over, stopping when you're at like, I don't know, 850 kills or whatever, and then getting the rest as wandering Green Ops soldiers in zones with delay. So given that, you're probably going to want to banish the Green Gourmet.
So obviously Slaw, oh no, we've got like, I don't know, at least 15 monsters during that time, of which the Green Ops are around. Is it really worth it to banish?
Kinda. So I actually did the math, and a banish saves like 0.9 adventures if you're running all that item drop.
That's 2,000 to cap both smoke bombs, right?
It's 2,400 to cap them. Yeah, but if you're just running 2,000, then a banish is worth about 0.9 turns or so, no matter what strategy you're using. Let me just link simulation results in chat. What that means is that it costs you a turn in the first place to banish the monster. So essentially you're just wasting that banish resource. Like if your banisher was free, you'd still be losing 1/10 of a turn over using it just in a zone with delay.
Mm-hmm.
However, the way you get around that loss is by using your banishers precisely when you're trying to, when you're running your limited duration item drop effects. So when you have plus 2,000% item for 10 adventures or whatever, and you want to preserve your effects, each additional turn of effects is worth, I think, like, God, you can do the arithmetic in these awful results that are presented lexicographically somehow. What it ends up being is like just under half a turn or so per turn of effects, something like that. So if you're using a free run banishing thing on the battlefield to extend effects and get rid of an undesirable monster, then that banisher is saving like closer to 1.3 turns, which is better than just using it to burn delay, which is still worse than some banishes, but if you don't have anything better to use your banishers on, it's fine. But not great, but fine.
If you're budgeting your resources and you know you may have some extra banishes left over, because we do have so many now, instead of just using it as a free run, you'd be better off getting a little more utility out of it on the battlefield.
Exactly. It's like 1/3 of a turn that you'd be getting out of doing this. And also, this strategy has it so that you use on average like 2.5 banishers here. And each of those would be saving like 1.3 turns or so. So it's not too bad. It's not like very resource intense, but it's correct.
Yeah, it seems right. You're going to time these buffs correctly, and a common strategy is to wish and eventually olfact your Green Ops soldier. So you're going to be spending turn there anyway, and if you can spare the 2.5 banishers that you maybe were going to be using just as a free run. And the Asden banish is something that falls into that category sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because you want to use it every 30 turns, and so if you don't have a viable target, maybe you can frame all of this battlefield nonsense around that 30 turn refresh of the Asden Banish.
Sounds reasonable.
So just to wrap up, we basically have 11 turns where we can pretty much cap the smoke bombs, which is with the champagne bottle and also squint.
And the primitive alien booze, right?
Mm-hmm. So you cast your squint, you go... what I do at least is that I go and use my stone wool, and then I get the +3 turns, which obviously I'm making sure I have only 10 turns active, and then I get +3 turns of squint. I then go get my... Well, before this I will have already got my primitive alien booze from Space Gate. Drink that up, so that gives me 9 turns total of steely-eyed squint. And then I'm using my free kills, so shattering punch ×3, not goblin, mob hit ×1. Is there anything else? There's missile, but that is basically the same as... That's just going to give you the drops anyway. Anyway, use all your free kills and to preserve those item buffs, and we're doing that in what... It comes out to a 14-turn window where you've got your plus... It's 11-turn window with... Because champagne obviously goes away after 11 turns, so 11 turns of getting like 2,000-something item percentage, and then after that it's like 12... Between 12 and 1,600 of... when you have just squint active for like 5 turns, I think, and then it's like for the rest of it will be like something like 600% item drops. So at least during that window where you're running the big buffs, Slaw, is it worth... This is the degenerate stuff I was doing, is it worth using a green smoke bomb to run away from a non-Grops soldier so that you can get more green smoke bombs?
Green soap, yeah. God.
Oh, so those are soap bubbles we're seeing. I thought it was like smoke in the picture.
The gist of the simulations I've run is that that's not good. It like almost breaks even if you have plus 2,000% item, or really the determining factor is the difference between your peak plus item percent when during those 11 turns and what you have outside of them. So it's like what you're trying to extend, that difference. So when that difference is like 1,000 or so, 2,000 versus 1,000, then you're just about breaking even on using green smoke bombs in that manner, which, you know, it's fine, but it's just complicated, you know? And you could instead not do that.
It gives you an inflated ALV summary.
Yeah, that's true. It makes that number real big.
Does it take into account the fact that we only get 11 turns of the champagne bottle, and if that's on a wrong monster, it's gone for that turn? Or
Yes. I have it set so that if the battlefield state is greater than or equal to 10, and it encounters a monster that it's not using a free banish on and isn't a green ops soldier, then it's decrementing an effect. And if it's a green ops soldier, then it's decrementing an effect anyway. And it has the way... So, yeah, I've accounted for effect durations. And I've run the simulation with effect durations from 0 to 10 adventures, and, you know, it's the same for all of them. Where you just shouldn't be really using your free runs to extend that. Well, or rather, that it doesn't matter whether you use them to extend the effect at plus 2,000% item, but at any lower item drop, like the lower you get, the worse that is. So at like, say, 1,000% at the peak and 500 without it, then you're looking at like a 3 or 4 turn loss over the course of the battlefield. So you shouldn't be doing it.
So I think we'd summarized it, whereas if you have all of the shinies, you can use smoke bombs, but you're not really gaining anything. But if you have less than all of the shinies, don't do it.
Yeah. If you have all the shinies, you can do whatever and be fine. If you're missing shinies, don't try to be fancy.
To put you on the spot, I know we've not planned for this, but Macrometeor?
Oh, what about it? What about it?
So we're in our window with all our big boy and our big girl buffs. There we go.
Uh-huh.
And we get, I don't know, something infuriating like an elite rigger that we've not banished for some reason. Is it worth me macrometeoriting?
No.
Huh.
If this takes math, then we can move on for now, and then we can maybe come back to this.
If a banisher is saving 0.9 in adventures, then a macrometeorite's going to be saving less than that. Like, even if it were always extending your effects by 1 turn, the macrometeorite, you would... God, that's only worth, like, 0.4 adventures, as we talked about. So it's just not great. Really not.
Ideally, you're using this resource in other zones because it's extremely effective. There's other monsters that are quest reliant that you want to use macrometeorite on because you have other resources like your exoskeleton V pockets, searching for topiary animals, pickpocketing those. You have so many ways to use this resource, not to mention just as a great pseudo, rejection banish. Mm-hmm. I'd be hard pressed to use too many more just for extract possibilities.
One very final point before we move on is that astronaut guy who's pointed out. But what I was doing is that when I had my my big buffs for those 14 turns, I was actually running the jellyfish because this makes it slightly better to run away. Because let's say you don't get a Grop soldier, you can at the very least extract, run away, and then essentially you've got a free second extract on the battlefield when. So that's one point to consider.
And,
using a smoke
I thought about that really hard when I was actually writing my simulation script, and decided against including it. But what I have on my simulator, what it does track, as you can see in the results, is the total number of encounters you get, and that's what you would care about in your context there. However, the difference between like 2,000 item drop and 1,000 item drop is roughly like 7 or 8 green smoke bombs, and the difference in the number of encounters between the difference in the number of counters if you're using your green smoke bombs on the battlefield or not is like 10 or something. So that's half a stench jelly. Half a stench jelly, I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I don't think half a stench jelly is going to be saving you 8 turns. So I would not use it.
Probably not.
Yeah. It just doesn't seem good.
Our final topic today, and this is what I've affectionately like to call Tentacore. What is Tentacore? Well, just to give you very, very, very brief before Slaw kind of wriggles all over it. There's an effect called Eldritch Attunement, which was added during that world event in, was it 2000?
Call it 2015, yeah, whatever.
You had these massive tentacles popping up everywhere, and they gave stuff which could mix into stuff that gave an effect called Eldritch Attunement. Now, this is absolutely optimal for Softcore. It's optimal at the very least for 2-day Softcore, and probably from Slaw's reaction there, also 1-day Softcore, but we'll get into that. Slaw, lead us into it.
Well, just linked a consumption plan from 2017, 1-day Softcore, which one will note that it ate an Eldritch Snap and drank 2 Eldritch Elixirs. So, yeah, this is certainly a viable thing. Oh, and that consumption plan was used for a contest where first prize was 10 Mr. Accessories. Very lucrative.
Is Lost doing the same thing this year, or?
I have no idea. I haven't seen much of Lost. Sad.
Yeah, he's been busy. Anyway, go ahead.
Basically, ever since that thing has come out, what Softcore has been about in terms of routing has been getting as many adventures of that effect as possible and extending it as much as possible. And yeah, and there's A. Sawyer talking about using it, and it sounds like he used it better than I did. You're essentially nowadays sequencing your entire run plan around leaving proper zones for Eldritch Tentacles to pop out of monsters that you have. The reason that we like Eldritch Attunement is that these tentacles, so if you win a fight against a monster while you have, and after the combat you have at least one adventure of Eldritch Attunement left, then you end up getting put into a free fight against, a fight against an Eldritch Tentacle. Eldritch Tentacles are free fights, so if you win, it doesn't cost an adventure, but it still burns delay. So essentially, every combat you win with this effect active burns 2 turns of delay instead of 1 turn of delay, or it advances the turn count in the zone by 2 instead of 1. So it then becomes a matter of getting as many adventures of this as possible and getting as many locations with 100% combat or at least all skippable non-combats. I think that's about it. You just want a bunch of those in a row. So, for example, like Outskirts of Cobb's Knob is an excellent one. The castle ground floor, the airship as well.
Silly question. With the Outskirts of Cobb's Knob, you can boost your combat rate up high enough so that you're guaranteed a combat?
I think it's 20%, so yeah.
I think that's what it is, or there's also the fact that there's just one thing that's the only skippable, or the only non-skippable non-combat there, I think, is the 75 meat one, right? And that's only once per Ascension.
Ouch or something on the chest.
Aside from that one, it's not really a problem.
So your first step is to get to a level so that you can actually consume.
These are all level 12. All ways of getting Eldritch Attunement, besides bathing in the fountain on generic summer holiday, require you to be level 12. You have to leave all of this stuff until way late in your run.
I guess before we get into the nitty-gritty of stuff, we'll just go through I know you've obviously talked about the sources just now. We have the Eldritch Elixir, which is 5 turns of the buff.
So it's 5 adventures of the effect, and it costs 3 organ space and is awesome. Like, those are the 3 important aspects about it.
Eldritch Snap is epic, I believe. Is it 1 organ space?
Yeah, it's epic, 1 organ space. It gives you 3 adventures of the effect. Can be doubled to 6 with Mayo, but that's not really a thing anymore. It's also so epic that it's actually like one of the best foods in the game.
Okay. And then Eldritch Pizza. I'm just checking it now. I think it's awesome, but I'm not sure how awesome it is.
It's middling, I believe. The benefit to Eldritch Pizza is...
The wiki says size 3, 9 to 11.
Yeah, it is benefited by Pizza Lover. I always thought the wiki was wrong because it has some weird numbers for the stat gains from it. It's just that the ones I'd been seeing were always just way higher because of Pizza Lover. Anyway, only gives 1 adventure of the effect, 3 fullness. Those are 2 big drawbacks. However, it has a 50% chance to give you an Eldritch Mushroom when you consume it, which you can then use to make another Eldritch Pizza. So in that sense, it's a good way to get multiple different sources of Eldritch Attunement in one run, which is often a thing that you want to do, because you can't usually get like just 30 adventures worth of delay in a row. It's real hard to do.
Can you time spin the snap?
No. So Eldritch Snaps are non-renewable, and at some point they had like a level 3 requirement or something. That's when they first came out.
You can time spin the pizza?
Oh, yeah, you can.
Can you? Yeah. So that's
I think anyway.
Something, I guess. But that's not as good as a stench jelly, is it?
Might be, actually. Well, using a time spinner on this would be like 1.5 turns of Eldritch Attunement for 6 organ space, or for like 4.5 organ space. Because remember that it gives you 50% chance of getting another pizza every time you eat a pizza. So, it could be good in that regard. I don't think I would ever do that because, your organ space is at a premium in a
1-day run.
Well, even 2-day runs. You really want to be filling up with all of this random turn saving crap.
For example, stench jelly.
Yeah.
What else?
I don't know. Key lime pies. Sure.
So we know where we get our Eldritch Attunement from. What else do we sort of need to kind of allow us to use this to its fullest?
So what you want is a bunch of free fight sources, things that make combats free, and things that otherwise extend effects. So basically everything that we were just talking about in
the discussion of grubs.
Yeah, everything we were just talking about there. And additionally, the Batumarang and Platinum Yandorian Express card, everyone's favorite, ultra rare.
In addition to just your Shattering Punch and Mob Hit.
Do you think there's an argument for... I mean, you don't really need to run many buffs. So let's say you're running Eldritch Attunement, you run a Unspeakachu.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And you're doing your free fights with one buff.
No,
it doesn't matter how many buffs you have.
The number of
just
effects
straight
doesn't...
50% chance.
Yeah.
If it fires at all.
Right.
So ignore the part about how many buffs you're running, but you're running Unspeakachu during your free fights with Eldritch Attunement before you're intending to use the Eldritch Attunement. And also that's obviously firing off more Eldritch Attunement, so more tentacles without decreasing the effect. Could that be a strategy, using Unspeakachu? The only problem obviously is that we want the exoskeleton.
Sure.
The fire rate on Unspeakachu is 1 in 40.
1 in 20. But
1 in 40 because it's 50%,
50%,
right?
yeah. So 1 in 40 chance of getting +5 turns of the effect, which is a way of saying every combat with it, a 1 in 40 chance of saving 5 turns. That's pretty good.
This is something that I've yet to do. I probably do it during Crimbo, where I'm gonna do dumb stuff with Unspeakachu and just see how many turns of Eldritch dumb attunement I can actually get.
Back when I was playing, getting to level 12 wasn't really an issue. So these days it should be even less of an issue. I don't expect that to be the limiting factor, especially given that in hardcore these days people are hitting level 12 on turn 50? Is that when they're doing that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, if we want to.
Yeah, you put off hitting level 12 until turn 100 so that you can get your Spooky Raven summon thingy.
Exactly.
Super degenerate. God, hardcore is awful.
Just to make a comment on that, I think hardcore standard is the most fun it's been ever, but it's an absolute pain in the backside to manage the damn familiars, because you have to run exoskeleton for about half a millennium.
Yeah.
And then you also want to run your nat for the the demon summon stuff, and also bacon for the dungeon thing on day 2.
Sure.
And
the familiars are certainly
an absolute
most difficult part of it.
The nat RNG is infuriating. Dictator will tell you, he's not here now obviously, but that sometimes you end up with 250 bacon before you've even seen a thin black candle. It happens. Yeah. And it's annoying.
I've actually did a simulation on that. I think average number of turns is 70 or 80 to get the demon summon, and then the RNG is
deviation, but the deviation was really high.
Yeah, the same amount.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe average was 100 and deviation was 80.
Yeah, I've gotten all 4 parts in 4 turns, and I've gotten no parts in 100 turns. So anyway, we're digressing there, but to come back to whatever it was we were talking about, whatever that was.
Ain, maybe you can more accurately phrase the question. All right, so we have the Eldritch Attunement. How do we best use it?
Yeah, right. So, as far as I know, before level 12, there's only one main milestone that we're trying to hit, and it's in a window that's before level 12, and that is the Nat summon. So I assume we want to get to level 11. No, excuse me. We want to get as many desks as we want to get all our desks, be level 11, finish off the Spooky Raven level 2, leaving everywhere as much as we can open for, tentacle stuff. Get the summon, and then we want to basically run as quickly as we can to level 12 so that we can start eating attunement stuff and start burning delay with the attunement stuff. Does that sound accurate?
That sounds right to me, with the one caveat that I'm not sure that doing Spooky Raven early is even necessary at this point. I get that it saves 5 turns, but 5 turns for a route that's very, very high variance, and it's conflicting with other powerful strategies that you could be doing. Don't get me wrong, I'm still behind anyone who's saying that doing the demon summon at level 11 is correct. It's just that it's a very strong consideration for me to just try different routes at this point.
In a 1-day run, I guess it'd be sensible to just get to level 12, forget about the level 11 summon, and if I don't know how likely this is going to be at this point, because you're probably going to blow over level 12 quite.
Yeah, that's the one thing about not even just the tentacle fights, but the consumables that give you Eldritch Attunement, they're all giving you 1,000 of each stat. So you're gonna, it's 666, but if you're using the pizza, that gets doubled. And so yeah, you hit level, and they're scaling free fights. So you're hitting level 13 very quickly after you get Eldritch Attunement going. Especially if you're using it in the Snow Joe Neverending Party and Witch Has Fights and whatnot with your Unspeakachu to save an 1/8 of a turn off of each of those combats. Or sorry, a 1/4 of a turn. Holy crap. That's some powerful stuff.
And something also to mention is that those 15 turns, I guess it's more like 10 turns of delay in the Spooky Raven level 2. Those 10 turns of delay, assuming you want those two ornate nightstands, are part of what you would want to use your attunement for, right?
Well, yes and no. Here's the issue with those. So keep in mind that all of the Eldritch Attunement fights, the Eldritch Attunement delay burning comes in chunks of 2. So it's the same sort of issue that you have with the Turkey Blasters coming in chunks of 5, where a lot of places have 5 turns of delay and you have to adventure there, and then you're wasting one of your Turkey Blaster adventures. So with Eldritch Attunement, you have the same sort of deal with the 5 delay zones. Thankfully, Spooky Raven second floor, I think a lot of them are 6 delay. 2 out of the 4 are 6 delay.
Only the bedroom is 6.
I thought the gallery was 2.
Gallery is 5. The ballroom
gallery
is 5.
5.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. I think it's just the bedroom.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I'll believe you. I don't know how things work.
Let me check my logs.
Oh, don't. No.
Anyway,
we don't care that much. So that's the sort of thing you have to worry about. The parity of the delay that you're burning.
5 turns, yes.
In terms of the main annoyance for this strategy is that it's an absolute pain in the butt to manage and route properly, correct?
Yes, and I think the main issue for it is that it's correct to do in 1-day softcore. However, 1-day softcore is a place where you have 20 pulls, you have organ space that is used for both turn savings and turn gen. And both of those aspects matter, so you have to balance it real carefully. It's highly non-trivial to know exactly how, like, which Eldritch Attunement sources you should be using there. For instance, A. Sawyer mentioned using a Platinum Endure and Express card. I originally intended to in my 2017 route, but I couldn't. I had budgeted for 2 pulls on Eldritch Attunement or something. Maybe it was 3. But I was going to pull an Eldritch Snap and a Platinum Enduring Express card. Because that's 1 organ space, and the adventures are very strong, so you're not losing anything there. So you don't have to like waste more pulls making up for it. The issue with that is that it's all 1 chunk. So if you have 1 source of Eldritch Attunement with a Platinum Enduring Express card, then you have to have everything in a row. And what I was planning on doing was using the Outskirts of Cobb's Knob and the airship. The airship is not great, but I kind of had to, because back then I wasn't hitting level 12 quite on time. I got there, I realized, oh, well, this isn't going to work because I actually have, I think I had 17 adventures of the effect, with including free kills and whatnot. So I needed to also use the castle ground floor. So instead of doing 1 chunk, what I ended up doing, 1 chunk of 8 adventures with 1 organ space, I ended up using 4 organ space, 1 Eldritch Snap and 1 Eldritch Elixir to split that 8 adventures of Eldritch Attunement up, which does squander one more turn of Eldritch Attunement, because the last adventure of it that you have doesn't give a tentacle. So every time you split it up, you're creating a new last adventure of the effect every time you do that. So splitting up into 2 wasted 1 adventure of it. And then I duplicated the Eldritch Elixir. And the reason I pulled an Eldritch Elixir over an Eldritch Snap was because I could duplicate it with my Machine Elf. So I now have 7 organ space being used on this. And the only reason I was able to do that is because my run was way faster than I expected, and I had enough adventures left over to convert them into turn savings with Eldritch Attunement.
One thing that would change, I guess, because we have a lot of free fights at the minute, like with NEP. NEP, like God Lobster.
Never Ending Party, for those of you like me who don't know what NEP means.
That is, at the very least, you can run your Eldritch Attunement and it gives you 1 stats, but 2, it also gives you familiar combats. So obviously, because familiar usage is tight, so let's say using Unspeaker Tube, if that's probably the best way to use Eldritch Attunement. Yeah. So Unspeaker Tube, but if not, if you're A. Sawyer and you're wrong, then you would use, for example, your Nat or your Exoskeleton and get basically double your combat turns, which is quite nice.
That's really important. Like, you also want, when you're routing with Eldritch Attunement, you also want to leave things like the Lianas, and
Drunk Pygmies.
Yes, Lianas and Drunk Pygmies are harder, but yeah, that's
it does fire on instant wins as such.
Yeah, and another thing that I just realized when you mentioned God Lobster, we were talking about the second floor of Spooky Raven as well. So Eldritch Attunement will only fire on monsters that are not already chained to another fight or non-combat. So the nightstands won't give you tentacles. Clingy monsters also won't give you tentacles, I think. And God Lobster won't give you tentacles because he's also has Chain to Choice, which is the monster property.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Also tentacles do not give you desert exploration, which I found out in one of my hardcore rooms.
Yeah. They also don't work in the Black Forest, but that's actually a different reason. And I would get into the reasons, but I can't. I also don't know the reason for the desert one.
I think Bobson said the only way that you can get non-native things in the Black Forest to work is if you digitize a Black Forest monster
Yep.
in the Black Forest.
Yep.
So, yeah. I mean, take that away as you want. I think that's a good place to wrap. Is there anything you'd like to add before we sort of wrap things up, Slaw?
Nah, we're good.
Yeah. So, if we take away anything from this today, it's that, Slaw, can you please ask CDM to the -ML from beneficial voting.
That needs to be negative for sure.
Chat commands diminishing Safari buff. That's obviously like number one priority.
Well, that's like right behind LaTeX support for chat.
Yeah, and then also I just thought of toggleable passives / skills in general.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how hard that would be.
Oh my god.
But it'd be nice. It would be nice. But otherwise, thank you, Violet, for your PvP expertise.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, welcome. Slaw, thank you for your tentacle wriggliness and battlefield spadingness, yes, and your maths.
Ugh. Yeah.
And yeah, I hope everyone enjoys the rest of their Thanksgiving weekend. Lift, any comments?
No, sir.
Okay, we'll probably be moving up to hardcore where Sawyer and Slaw will be arguing about Unspeakachu, so definitely stay tuned for that. And thanks everyone for listening.